All right, so we're studying the book of Hebrews, and we'll do a little, going to have a fairly quick summary this morning on the Hebrews book, and a lot of it's because, in general, there's not a lot known about the book as far as the author is concerned, and where and when it was written, and things like that. So we're not going to spend much time on that. We're going to concentrating mainly on the contents of the book. We're assuming that it was written somewhere between 60 and 66 AD, and that's just because the Christians are being persecuted during this period of time, but the Jews are not, as far as the focus of the letter, what's going on in it. And since it was written to Jews, you would have thought that if the Jews were being persecuted during that period of time, there would be some mention of that, but there's not. Certainly it was before the Jewish wars began in 66 AD, because then there was persecution of the Jews during that period of time, but before the fall of Jerusalem, which is in 70 AD. So we can generally look at about what the time frame is. The audience, of course, is Jewish Christians, because you can tell that from the name and certainly the contents. You would have needed to have some kind of background in the Old Testament for this to make any sense that somebody wrote to you about, in this particular way. And so in understanding the book, we need to understand that the book is written as basically a book of comparisons. We have Jesus on the one side compared with the law of Moses on the other side, and as we go through, that will become obvious. Like I said, the knowledge of the Old Testament, the book won't make much sense to you if you don't have a knowledge of the Old Testament. Just because there are things in there in these comparisons, it'd be like going up to somebody in the Fiji Islands, who's never seen snow in their life, and expecting them to understand what snow is, and you can't use a comparison on, like to ice cubes or something. It's cold like ice cubes. Oh, they've never seen ice cubes either, So you have to for comparisons to work, you have to understand what it is you're being compared to. So that's kind of the reason and so fortunately for us, we've been spending the last 3.5 years looking through the entire scriptures, and so we should be well prepared for this at this time. The purpose is, again, to look at the idea from the comparison in the fact that Jesus is superior to anything, that the old law, the patriarchal law, anything that was out there. So if Jesus is the best, why settle for something less than the best? And it just makes sense to do that, and that's the idea. So be faithful to Christ no matter what. Now, as far as the outline, the way we're going to cover it today is there are really like 4 different sections that you could look at when we're looking at this. We're going to look at the first 3 today, and chapter 13 as the conclusion is it's a great chapter. It's got a lot of the general kinds of admonitions and exhortations that you would expect for someone to be, making to Christians that are out there. But we aren't going to have time to get to that today, so we won't. But basically the 3 sections are chapters 1 and 2, Jesus is incomparable, sections 3 through 10, considering Jesus as the ultimate high priest, and 3 different things associated with that. And then finally, because Jesus is so great, then we need to be faithful and to persevere through trials and temptations. And so your question sheet is split up into those 3 different sections. And so as we go through, we'll be able to keep track of what's going on with there. All right, so let's go on to question 1 then as we begin to look through the book of Hebrews. Okay, in the first 2 chapters of Hebrews, God reveals the incomparable gift of Jesus Christ, the, quote, heir of all things, through whom he made the world. So what characteristics of Jesus make him incomparable to anything else? And we're looking at the first 13 verses in particular there, specifically 3 through 13, if you want to get really specific on it. It kind of breaks down into a couple of different categories here, but go ahead and give me an example of why Jesus, as the heir of all things, through whom he made the world, why is he so much better than anything else? And let's just go ahead and start, and we'll take a look. And Shirley going to get us kicked off for this morning.
He's God's son. Angels are told to worship him. He rules on the throne. He laid the foundation of the world. He exists forever. He sits at the right hand of God, and he gives us the word of Christ.
Okay, so if you kind of had to wrap all those things into a package, what characteristic of Jesus would you be talking about there?
His deity.
His deity. Okay, so deity. Now, what kinds of things are involved, characteristics do we associate with deity? What kinds of characteristics do you? We talk about the omnipotent, omnipresent, omni. So
the angels, for instance, he's
right.
superior to them. So.
In the way that a king would be, and a king is superior to his subjects. All right, and because he wields what? Power. That's right. So we know that all power and authority was given to Jesus by his Father to reign with all of this from the creation all the way through. So so this first really talks about power. What else do we think about when we think about a king? Authority, okay. So authority is associated with power. A king is, if you address a king, how do people address a king formally? Majesty, yes, His Majesty, Her Majesty, that's right. So if you had to look at things that talked about the majesty of Jesus, what kinds of things would you be talking about there? Shirley mentioned a couple of them. She talked about the relationship to angels and being superior to the angels. And anything else?
Sits on the throne.
Sits on a throne. Okay, that's right. And like in the English kingdom, okay, they have you have the king or the queen, and then below them you have the Prince of Wales. Okay. And what's the big deal about the Prince of Wales in English? He's the heir to the throne. In fact, the son, right? Okay, so all of those things give us this idea of when you talk about Jesus that he as a gift, he is so much above, and you just can't compare. Nobody else in the world, in the universe, in the creation, has this list of qualifications and characteristics. And these are all given by his Father to him to be able to do what it is that he does. So it's as if we're going to get started, very first chapter, talking about Jesus and a comparison, that's a pretty good way to start. Okay, so let's look at question 2 then. So why should people pay closer attention to what they have heard or read about Jesus in God's Word? And then secondly, how did Jesus perfect the role of author of their salvation? So what does the Hebrew letter say about, and we're talking about chapter 2, verses 1 through 18 here. What does it say about this idea that, why should we pay attention? Jeff?
The first thing is so we don't drift away.
So don't drift away, okay. And what would be the danger involved with that?
Well, it's kind of like we usually get this compared to an anchor, or the anchor of our soul, or those kind of things that it's just, I think that it's easy sometimes to become complacent and we just kind of can go through the motions, or we don't have the same passion and zeal we may have had in an earlier time, and you can just, and you know, the thing I always say about drifting is you don't know you're drifting until it's too late a lot of times, and you always get the waterfall example, right? You're drifting down the river, and all of a sudden here comes the waterfall, and it's a danger that is easy to miss. And so I think that's why it says pay close attention.
I don't know if you guys saw the picture in your own mind as Jeff was talking about that, but for me, I picture a sunny, warm afternoon, no breeze, just out on the river, and just you're getting sleepier and sleepier, and pretty soon your eyes are getting heavy, and you're just falling asleep, and it's just so comfortable, isn't it? I mean, it's just so great going through life like that, just floating down life's river until, yeah, that's a danger, isn't it? Are we told to drift through life with that kind of an attitude? No. What are some of the things that you think about? Some of the adjectives that get used in the Bible when it talks about how we should approach life. Vigilance. Okay, I like that. Vigilance, diligence, perseverance. What else? How often is the idea of a watchman used in the scriptures? What happens to the watchman when the watchman goes to sleep at his post?
The whole city will be in.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, it's bad for him, bad for everybody. So yeah, so that's right. So how did Jesus perfect the role of? He's called the author of salvation. How did he perfect that role? Give me some things that he did here. What overall made him worthy of being called the author of salvation? What was it that he was, in fact, physically to be?
Came to earth and gave his life.
Gave his life. What is that called?
Sacrifice.
A sacrifice. That's right. So he suffered, and he suffered as a man. He gave that sacrifice as a man. For who?
That's willing to obey him.
Right, mankind, right? Men and women, you and me. That he became like us so that he could be the sacrifice for us. And so that, yeah, he's called a brother to mankind. In verses 11 through 17 there. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was just going to say, you see the huge benefit in verses 14 and 15, where he can destroy.
Go ahead, read that.
I want me to read it. Okay, now since the children have flesh and blood in common, Jesus also shared in these, so that through his death he might destroy the one holding the power of death, that is the devil, and free those who were held in slavery all their lives by the fear of death. You know, that unknown that's been out there since sin entered the world, that Jesus has taken the sting away from it, the power away from it, because we know in death we're just going to be with him.
What's one of the where does sin start? Bible tells us, where does sin start?
In the heart.
In the heart. Why is, okay, so in the heart, desires that are in the heart, okay? So how do we get those desires activated? How does the devil get those desires activated?
Temptation.
Through temptation, that's right. So if we need it, would you say that temptation probably was the biggest challenge we have to face individually? Yeah. And they're tailored for us. You know, it's like the thing that bothers me may not bother you, and the thing that bothers you may not bother me. But Jesus went through all, he was tempted in all, so that he could show us how to get over those temptations and be able to get through them. And as a result of having done that, who better to be able to speak for us about those things than somebody who went through it himself? Shirley, go ahead.
A merciful God,
And why is he merciful?
because he went through all
Because
that.
he's been tempted in all of these things. A king that has not experienced anything in the way of this it'd be very difficult for them to be merciful in a knowing kind of way. And mercy comes as a result of knowing the situation and knowing, for instance, that for us, when we transgress God's law and we're separated from God, how do we get back there? Well, we can't get back there. There's no way to get back once you're separated, except for this man who is God, known as Jesus Christ, who came, put himself in our situation exactly, and then overcame all of that. And now he's able to go before his Father and be merciful because he's been through it. And now he can go and he can be there and be the mediator for us. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's helping us understand that dual nature of Christ. He, like we noted in chapter 1, he shows just how majestic he is and how he is deity. And then in chapter 2, it's about how, and yet he's able to call us brethren. And he had to be made like unto his brethren. And he quotes these Old Testament passages in verse 12 and 13 where he was described as somebody who would be like a brother to humanity. And that's what made him perfect. God made him this perfect sacrifice because he is the majestic God, but he is also flesh and blood.
When I think back, as you were describing that, there are many different types on earth that God gave us, physical types that help us to understand what it is that we're talking about in many times on the spiritual side of the house. But one of the things that I think of as you were mentioning that, Todd, was think about Adam as he was in the garden. And there was nobody in creation, nothing in creation that was suitable to be a pair, to be a match for him. And yet God in his wisdom was able to craft the perfect match for him and called him woman. And the two became one, and that kind of insight, that kind of pairing, that perfect matching is what this is all about. And just think of the beauty of the relationship that we have, that we are able to call brother the creator of all things. I mean, you talk about an incomparable gift. That is an incomparable gift. So he deserves the role. He's perfect for the role of the author of our salvation. Okay, so question 3. Now we're in, that was the first part of the Jesus is incomparable part of Hebrews. Chapters 1 and 2, okay? Keep that in mind. All right, now we're going through 3 through 10, and we're going to talk about this idea of the ultimate high priest, which is Jesus, okay? So question 3, how is Jesus superior to Moses? This was important for the Jewish audience, wasn't it? Who was Moses in as far as, looking at the highlight reel of your favorite all-time Jews for the Jews? Who was think about that role that Moses had there, right? Okay? Yeah. I mean, you had Abraham out there, but other people shared Abraham too. But I mean, when you get to Moses, you really, this is the leader that got it all started as a people that were set apart. Okay, so yeah, pretty important. So, how is he superior to Moses, and how does the Hebrew writer use God's Sabbath rest to exhort Christians to remain faithful until the end? So let's look first of all at the Moses part here. What's the comparison that is used here in chapter 3 to Moses? How's he comparable to Moses? Superior to him in what way? What's the description? How does the Hebrew writer help us to understand this clearly? Clarissa?
The builder of the house has more glory than the house. So Jesus is the creator and
Okay, all right. So there's many different layers of that image in your mind as far as the Jesus, the original creator, of course, or if you think of the house as the creation, you think of the idea of God's people. Okay, you could think of in that aspect. You can think of it as in the aspect of the church. All of those things. Moses. They thought of Moses as the leader of the Jews, right? But how did God consider Moses? How did Moses consider Moses?
He was a servant in the house.
He was a servant, exactly. A great example, by the way, of a servant with a servant's attitude is Moses, as far as his relationship with God and how he handled that situation. They talk about him as being one of the most humble men that ever lived. And that's one of those things. So Jesus was the builder and overseer. That's his role. Moses was the role of a servant. So obviously there's a big difference between those two. And obviously you'll get the difference between a son and an heir, and say the head overseer of the house. You can see the difference in those two, all right? Okay, and so that's kind of the role. So how does the Hebrew writer use God's Sabbath rest to exhort Christians to remain faithful until the end? He uses this idea of a rest. What was the problem the Israelites had that this example of a Sabbath rest didn't fit real well with their history? What happened to them? And the Hebrew writer is trying to make a point here.
Their disobedience caused them to fall in the wilderness, and so he goes on to make the point that we have to watch out for disobedience on our end, or we'll miss the heavenly rest.
Good. Yeah. They were enslaved in Egypt, and there was a rest waiting for them in the promised land, the land of milk and honey, as it was described to them. And that first generation that was enslaved in Egypt never made it to that rest. And it was because of exactly what Daniel's talking about, that disobedience. And what a shame. Doesn't your heart just ache every time you read about these silly Israelites, How stupid that they would give this up, all of that, and then we go out and sin.
The same as we if we don't stay faithful to the end.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a poignant message, and it's so practical to you and me that sometimes we just want to. We're like the monkey that puts his hand in the jar, But you heard about the South American monkeys, the way the South American tribes catch monkeys down there is they would put jars. They'd put nuts down at the bottom of the jar. Put a nut down there, and they'd have a jar, and the monkey would put his hand in the jar, and the jar had a small opening, at the top, so it's just enough room to reach in. But if you grab the nut to pull it out, you have to make a fist. And the fist is too big to go through the hole in the jar. And the monkey will not let go of the nut. And the monkey gets caught hanging there with his fist, with the nut, and won't let go. And isn't that the way we sometimes we want to give up heaven for a nut and shake our fists in front of God saying, I know better, right? Yeah, we do that. So this is a great exhortation here. So, the Sabbath rest. We don't want to give that up. Okay, question 4. Why can we draw near with confidence to Jesus' throne? All right? And then why were these lessons concerning Jesus' priesthood difficult to explain to Jewish Christians? And third, why is it very difficult to restore a Christian who has willfully rejected Jesus? So let's go with this first one. Why can we draw near with confidence to Jesus' throne? Who wants to read chapter 4, verses 14 and 15? First one who gets it. All right, Ray, go ahead.
Seeing that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession. For we have not a high priest which cannot be touched in the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin.
Okay, so how is it that we can go before the throne with confidence? What gives us that confidence to be? We're not talking about arrogance. No arrogance. Confidence. Confidence comes from what? How do you get confident about something?
Assurance, being sure of something.
Right, through maybe experience, knowledge, you've seen it before. You believe it, right? That this is going to work. So all those things are associated with confidence. So when we go before God and we have Jesus by our side, because we're faithful to God, we shouldn't we have confidence? It's the Son of God. He's on the throne right now. I mean, think about in the Old Testament, when Jesus was on earth, and we saw some examples of this before, who had the ability to forgive sins on earth? Jesus did. Examples of it. Yeah. Same Jesus, okay? Same one, even higher in esteem now, and that's the person we get to do this with. So we should have confidence. So why are these lessons concerning Jesus' priesthood, why were they difficult to explain to the Jews? The Jews had a problem with this, the Jewish Christians. What's the description that the Hebrew writer uses to describe the Jews that he is writing this letter to?
They were dull of hearing.
Dull of hearing. What other descriptions? We have lots of babies here in this congregation. As far as little ones, so cute. Now, if they were 40 years old and still looked like that, we'd say, well, you got a problem, right? Wouldn't that be a problem? If you're 40 years old, still. Right. So these Jews were in that situation. We should not be in that situation. We have the whole law. We have the whole book. We have that which is perfect and complete before us. The exhortation for us is we should not be still, being confused by these kinds of things and everything. So that's a good exhortation for us. Why is it very difficult to restore a Christian who has willfully rejected Christ? And somebody's got their hand up back there. No? Yeah. Okay. What is the problem that we face if we willfully say, Seen it? Been there? Done that? I don't want anything to do with the church. I don't want anything to do with Christ. I don't want. There is no heaven. There is no. I'm not buying it.
Again, Son of God, not denying that he is.
Yeah. It is okay. So there we go in the back.
When you willfully sin, there remains no more sacrifice. It makes the sacrifice of Jesus Christ of no effect. When we're in the world or sinning willfully, whether we're part of the church and we have that attitude and we know we're doing wrong and continue in it.
And why is it that we would, knowing what we know, why would we get into a situation like that? How could we possibly get that? What happens to a conscience that constantly goes and does the same thing over and over and over again? Okay, so you form a habit, don't you? Yeah, that's right. And from a physical standpoint, we liken it to a callus, or searing is a good way of looking at what happens to a burn victim that burns the back of their hand, let's say. Okay, well, it kills all the nerves in there. They can't feel anything anymore. They don't even know if they could stick their hand in the fire again, burn it all the way down to the bone, and not even know it was being burned. And that's the way we can become. And that there's danger. There's extreme danger in that. So we need to keep that in mind. And that's one of the big exhortations here. Question 5. Why is the high priesthood of Jesus superior to that of the high priest under the law of Moses? Now, there's a lot of reasons here. Chapter 5, verse 6, verse 10, 7, chapter 7, all of chapter 7 in there. Let's just the big ones. What is the big comparison that is made to help us to understand this particular point? The Hebrew writer makes a big comparison here.
The high priest of the Old Testament had to go in and sacrifice for his own sin and then the sin of the people, whereas our high priest was sinless. He not only offered, he brought the sacrifice, and he was the sacrifice.
Good. Fantastic. Yes. The act, we can see in the things that Jesus did and what the Old Testament priests did, that there really isn't a comparison there because of the things you're talking about. What character in the Old Testament was Jesus likened to? Melchizedek. Who was Melchizedek?
He was a priest forever.
A priest forever. Okay, so he was an eternal priest. What else about Melchizedek do we know? Okay, he was greater than Abraham because Abraham did what? Offered tithes to him. That's right. And what did he do to Abraham?
He blessed him.
He blessed him. Who's the higher up? The one giving the blessings or the one receiving the blessings? Who's higher in authority? The giver. That's exactly right. So yeah, he did that. What else do we know about Melchizedek? He was a king. Okay, so he was a priest and a king at the same time. How about the Old Testament? The Levitical priests, were any of those of the tribe of Judah? No, that was the kingly tribe, right? They were the Levite tribe. But Jesus, he's a priest, but he wasn't of the tribe of Levi. He was of the tribe of Judah. So something had to have changed, didn't it, in the law? Gil?
Well, I mean, we don't know his genealogy, and it was before the law of Moses, so that's
right.
That's Jesus was of the same tribe or a priest as of the order of Melchizedek.
Okay. So we know that he was a king because he was called the King of Salem. He's the King of Peace, King of Righteousness. He was a priest of the Most High God. So he was a king and a priest at the same time. And the point that Hebrews is making in here is that Well, the point that you were making, sir, was exactly that, is that you have all of this combined into one person. That is definitely superior than something that is, just you get to do this and then you get to do that. The king gets to do this. The priest gets to do that. Here's the one with all authority and is serving God at the same time as a priest. So those are some pretty cool things there. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. About the tabernacle. That was about his priesthood. And so just think of the order of, he's a priest of the order of Melchizedek. It means that something was going to change big time, and he was going to be, that priesthood was going to be far superior. All right? So now let's take a look at the tabernacle. What was the tabernacle in the Old Testament?
It's a place where the presence of God met the people.
Okay. So that was the place that was designed. What was it designed after? We know God was the designer. Okay. What was he designed after? Would the Hebrews letter tell us?
A copy of the things in heaven.
Copy of the things in heaven. Now this was something. This was a great point that Brother Waldron was making in his book, and I had never considered it. Never considered the idea. Because I always thought about this. This is the real stuff right here. This is reality, okay? And then you have the spiritual world, okay, that's out there. Can't see it, right? Like the wind. Can't see it. Mysterious. Well, in fact, that's all wrong. It's completely backwards. Hadn't even thought about that before. That God, the spiritual world, is that world which is eternal. That's long before this stuff showed up, okay? This is the copy of the real thing that's out there. And the real thing exists, and it's with us right now. It's always been here. And so that what a fantastic thing. The tabernacle was a copy of the real relationships and how everything within the spiritual world is set up. And it gives us the idea of why there's a separation, for instance, between God, that which is all good, all powerful, and sin, which is the opposite of that. You have a wall, you have a tent, you have, curtains and everything. It's all about separations, isn't it? Right? What was it that Jesus allowed as his relationship with God? What is it that he allowed to happen that never happened during the Old Testament? And this is a benefit for us, you and me. Who was able to go be in the presence of God in the Old Testament? High priest. Okay, once a year, Day of Atonement. Okay. Now, where did Jesus go? Where is Jesus right now? He's within the veil, right? Now, how do we get access to God?
The new covenant.
Right. But how do we get access to God now, today? Yep. Once we're children of God, how do we get access to God today? Through Jesus. Yes, all those are true. How do we get access to God today? Prayer. Thank you. Do we talk to God? Yes, through prayer. When we're talking to God, are we in the presence of God? If we're right with God, right? If we're not fooling ourselves, okay? And who's with us? So that we can be in the presence of God. If I've sinned and I'm asking for forgiveness from sin, and I'm repenting of those sins from my heart, I'm going to God for that forgiveness. Okay, we're praying through Christ. Christ is the mediator. He's where God is. And we can be where We can enter through the veil. We can get through the veil because Jesus is our brother. We're the inheritance. We're heirs too, aren't we? We're heirs. And as a result of that, we can enter in through the veil. Just it's not there anymore. Jesus tore down the veil for us. I mean, what a great thing. I mean, that you talk about the tabernacle, you had all the separations, only this kind of priests could only go into the holy place, right? And then you had the high priest once a year, you go into the Holy of Holies. You had the Gentile areas out there where everybody else, and the areas where everybody else could go. There's no way you're getting into the holy place, let alone the Holy of Holies as a Jew. This is a big deal for these guys. So, yeah, so it's a whole lot superior to that. All right, question 7. Why is Jesus' sacrifice superior to the sacrifices made under the law of Moses? Just give me one thing of why it is superior. Okay, great. Perfect sacrifice, the complete sacrifice, that would be a propitiation, right? Means it's a suitable sacrifice, right? And I heard over here, once and for all, eternal. Yeah, for those that obeyed God back there, to those that obey God in the future, all of them are in there. So, oh yeah. Whereas the sacrifices of the Old Testament were constantly before you. What is supposed to change in the New Testament that makes it so that you're not supposed to be, every day, sinned again, but that's all right. God's there to forgive me. Sinned again. What's supposed to change? What kind of, where's the law?
No other sacrifices needed.
Okay, right. There's no other sacrifices needed. But what happens if we don't change? What happens if our heart doesn't change? Where is the law supposed to be written? In our hearts. That means what? What does it mean that the law is written on your heart? It's the way you're going to live your life. Your life is going to be directed to work, to move, to all of your being. And so the idea is that the sacrifice of Jesus is not just about the fact that it is a better sacrifice, but it's better because we're supposed to change. We're supposed to sin less as life goes on and as it rolls on. So anyway, there's question 8 was just about that because of Jesus' greatness, remaining faithful. But if you haven't had a chance to finish up your reading in Hebrews, it's wonderful. Next week, the book of Revelation in one lesson. All right, so it's going to be fun.